When we settled in Austin back in 2018, Leander wasn't even on our list. It felt too isolated and didn't have much variety in terms of restaurants, parks, businesses, or other amenities. But since then, Leander has transformed dramatically. This area has grown significantly, with Leander's population increasing by an impressive 45% since 2020. Furthermore, a study by census.gov ranked it number 4 in the nation for internal migration. So today we're focusing on Crystal Falls, one of Leander's premier neighborhoods known for its quality of living. As always, I will evaluate it based on 3 key criteria: convenience, surroundings, and real estate. So how does Crystal Falls compare to other areas? Stick around and find out. Crystal Falls is a part of the 78641 zip code in Leander, and it's on the southwest side of Leander. Remember that Leander is huge, and you can't really look at the entire Leander region as one city. You should look at it from individual neighborhoods perspective. Crystal Falls is right on the border with Cedar Park, just to the north of it. Crystal Falls was established in the 90s but became a lot more popular in recent years. There are many neighborhoods within Crystal Falls and they differ from one another, and I will just mention that the main neighborhoods are the Fairways, the Bluffs, and Great Mesa. Great Mesa is a big one. It's very unique in style. Some of these neighborhoods are gated, but just FYI, you don't really have to gate anything because you don't have too much crime in this area from the get-go. Alright, so starting with lifestyle, shopping, and restaurant. And I will say that within Crystal Falls, you don't have a lot, but you are relatively close to Whitestone, and in Whitestone you have just a bunch of restaurants. With proximity to Crystal Falls, I like the Big Lot. It's not really a restaurant, it's a food truck venue, but I love it and I go there with the family all the time. And a place that was opened up recently and I particularly liked is Kane. It looks like Cane, but they told me it's called Kane. It's a Japanese cuisine. It's a bit higher end, but it's kind of nice if you want to go to a high-end Japanese cuisine. Instead of driving all the way to Uchi downtown, you can go to Leander and have a really pleasant and tasty experience. Another place I like is Eurasia Ramen, but it's a bit farther out. With regards to shoppings, within Crystal Falls, you don't really have all that much. You need to drive a tiny bit and get to the H-E-B or Costco or Walmart or everything that you have, again, in the Whitestone corridor. I should mention there's a new development on New Hope, but again, it's not super close to Crystal Falls, and with Austin you have developments in a bunch of different areas. So when I account for all of that, I'm going to rank it 3 out of 6. Moving on to transportation, we'll start with the public transportation and just say no. You don't really have public transportation in Crystal Falls. And if you're going to bet on public transportations while living in this area, I think you're going to have a bad time.
French fry when you pizza, you're gonna have a bad time.
What you do have is proximity to 183 and 183A, the toll road. And from the 183, you can connect to Whitestone, to the 620, to Mopac, and to the 45 toll road. But do note, other than this main transportation road, you're kind of on a choke point. So it's something to consider. This is the main thing that you have. If you're trying to drive anywhere, you're just going to connect to 183 and proceed. So with all of that in mind, I have to give it a 2 out of 6. Moving on to hub proximity. Counting for the main hubs, let's talk about the domain. If you're driving to the domain during rush hour and you're taking the toll, it's going to take you 25 to 40 minutes. If you're driving to the domain without the tolls, it's going to take you 30 minutes to 1 hour. And if you plan to drive even more south towards downtown, it's going to take you anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour and a half with tolls at rush hour, or between 50 to almost 2 hours if you are in the rush hour not taking the tolls. Ouch, that is definitely not something you should be doing. You do need to consider that if you're living in Crystal Falls, you are probably going to use the toll road quite often. And if you're not going to use the toll road, you are going to spend a bit more time on the road. When accounting for all of that, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 6, and that is under the assumption that you are taking the tolls. And if you're not taking the tolls, you should probably bump it down to 2 out of 6. Moving on to surroundings, starting with the schools. So you have Whitestone Elementary and you have Winkley, and these schools are ranking relatively high. Then for middle school, you have Leander Middle School and ranking mediocre to high. So when accounting for all of that, I'm going to give it a total score of 4 out of 6. Moving on to parks and greenery. And while the neighborhood is newer in nature, which means that you don't have an abundance of mature big trees, you are doing just fine because there's a lot of money spent on parks, and you have many nice parks within proximity. I like the entrance to Crystal Falls. There's a nice playground there. And one more place that I really like within proximity is the Good Lot. In the Good Lot, you have a big pub and then several food trucks and an area for the kiddos to play. It's very cute. I like going there with the family and meeting other friends there, and I think it's a great place to have between like 5 to 10 minutes away from your home. With all of that in mind, I'm going to rank it 4 out of 6. Moving on to community and crime, and one of the things I have to mention is the huge growth that we have seen in the past several years. The population of Leander grew by 45% since 2020. The average household income in this neighborhood is about $150,000. The median age in Crystal Falls is about 35 years of age, and 76% of households are homeowners. And I will say that when I represent young families moving to Austin, oftentimes we're seeing Crystal Falls ranking relatively high because of its great value for money. One more thing I want to point out is the terrific HOAs we're seeing in Fairways and Highland that has a lot of events and community building, and I think it's pretty much the right type of HOAs. I know that some HOAs can be a bit more difficult in nature, and I did find that in Crystal Falls they are not, they're actually kind of legit. The fact you have a lot of community activities definitely bumps it up. With regards to crime, well, if you've seen my videos, you know what I'm going to say now. There isn't really all that much crime or at all in the northern suburbs of Austin. It's very green on the map, and we like seeing this, especially for families. So when I factor all of that into the equation, I'm going to give it 5 out of 6 for community and crime. Moving on to real estate, starting with affordability. And Crystal Falls definitely shines when it comes to affordability because you're getting a lot of bang for your buck when you are buying a place there. Since the houses are newer, they're a bit larger, you don't really compromise on schools or greenery, and you still pay $236 per square foot. The main compromise, as you probably get it by now, is with regards to the convenience, but this is something you should factor in for your own. From the perspective of structure for money, it is looking excellent. I have to give it a 5 out of 6. Moving on to scarcity, and since it is a planned community, the development is controlled, but there are a lot of lots in this area, and there are a lot of lots in Leander and the surrounding areas. It is something that you have to consider. When you're buying into a neighborhood, you want to consider how landlocked it is. And Crystal Falls is not super landlocked because of the way that Leander is built. So I'm going to give it a 3 out of 6. With regards to density, well, this area is fairly spacious. And if you're looking at Grand Mesa, it's very spacious in comparison. You can expect large yards. We're seeing lot size between 0.18 all the way up to like half acre in size. And the houses are large. We're speaking of houses that are built between 2,500 to even 5,000 square feet. So when I account for all of that, I have to give it a 5 out of 6. Last but not least, character. On the one hand, we have a relatively new community. It's a bit more mundane when you look at houses that were built recently by a planned developer because they look more similar to one another. And there are areas in Crystal Falls that you drive and you only see like a bunch of rooftops, one on top of another, and I personally don't connect with it at all. On the other hand, you do have an abundance of parks, you do have several neighborhoods that are more spatial in nature. Some of these houses are a bit more custom in nature depending on the specific neighborhood, and you do have some trees. Unlike new developments that are super new and everything is just like vacant and looks like an episode from Breaking Bad, this one actually has young trees. So when I account for all of that, I'm giving it a 4 out of 6 for character. And I think that the type of clients that would really connect with Crystal Falls are the families. This is a very family-oriented neighborhood. Well, it's a suburb, of course it is. So when we factor all of that in and look at the big picture, trying to look at all of the criteria at once, we're seeing that Crystal Falls underperforms when it comes to convenience. And it makes sense, it's not as convenient as some other suburbs that are more centralized in nature, suburbs that are closer to more venues, closer to more transportation roads, and we have to factor that in. On the other hand, in the surroundings department, it performs very well, and in the real estate department, it performs very well with 4.2 when we compare it to other neighborhoods. In Crystal Falls, you are going to get a lot of bang for your buck while not compromising on your surroundings and while not super compromising on some of the aspects of the actual home. So basically, you're going to trade convenience with more home without trading on surrounding. The total score is not super high, and I think it's mainly due to the surroundings. And when all is said and done, it's really about you. How do you weigh the different criteria in order to achieve an informed decision for your specific family? And I do remind you, I'm making all these videos to try and help, but there is not a great alternative to a consultation call in which we can discuss, understand your specific situation, show the different neighborhoods in Austin, and figure out together where is the best place for you to move to or invest if you're considering this option. Every family is unique from one another, and it's not about the best choice, it's about the best choice for you. Looking in Zillow and seeing a bunch of pretty pictures of houses is easy, but understanding what is the neighborhood that fits your individual criteria is more difficult, and that's why you have me. So feel free to reach out if you want to connect. And if you have any questions, ask them. I read everything and I reply to everything. Don't forget to check out my ranking playlist in YouTube, and you can see more neighborhoods ranked, and you can kind of understand what is the best fit for you. And if you find value in this content, please consider dropping me a like and subscribing to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.